Hey guys, I'm Bex,
And I'm Grace.
and we're the Packer Sisters.
Tune in each week as we process through everyday topics and personal experiences.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us for My GeneSIS Episode 3. Last week we mentioned one of our biggest moves from Kenmore to Wenatchee, Washington. It wasn't the distance that was the most significant, but the reason behind why we moved in the first place. It wasn't a job, it wasn't school. Our family had just gone through a very difficult and defining moment together, enduring spiritual abuse and manipulation at a place we had grown to love. And this place is a church somewhere in the Seattle area that for the rest of the episode we will refer to as WTF.
There's a lot of connotation behind that, but we're just going to let it be. So before we really dig into our family experience and personal experiences in this, we thought we could take a little second to define spiritual abuse and what does that actually mean? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, we both have had experience with this, and we know tons of people that have had experience with spiritual abuse. And we've realized that it's really hard to define what exactly it is because based on someone's experience, the definition will change slightly. So what would you say about that, Grace? Like, what would you say spiritual abuse is?
Well, I've been doing a lot of personal research on this lately, just kind of as we prepared to talk about it this week. And spiritual abuse can be compared to many other kinds of abuse that we hear about: sexual abuse, physical, domestic abuse. And so really what it comes down to is having somebody in the relationship who has power and wields that power over another in a way that can bring harm to the other person. And oftentimes it turns into manipulation, and it affects the other party, usually emotionally and mentally and spiritually in this case. What else would you contribute to that, Becca?
I actually, for my senior thesis in college, made a film called Walking Through Fire. It was like a mini doc, like 10 minutes. I explored the idea of spiritual abuse and its definition changing, and I learned a lot about it through that experience. Just the fact that, if you ask someone that's gone through that experience what they think it is, and then if you ask maybe like a clergy member, like they'll have a totally different definition.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just depends who you are, where you came from, and again, what you experienced. I guess, like, if I were personally to define it, I might kind of say something like spiritual abuse, is about an institution that inputs or places certain moral codes on like a community of people without really giving them a choice. And
Mm-hmm.
whether they mean to or not, it's going to affect this community of people.
I will say, and I'm sure this goes for Bex as well, and also our other family members. But for me, I'm still working through this process. I'm still processing these images and thoughts, journal entries, things from, almost 8 years ago now? Holy cow, almost 8 years ago. And these things still haunt me. They still hang over my head, and it makes life hard sometimes. And I just know that my healing process isn't over, and it's going to take a long time. And I'm pretty sure Bex and my family might agree with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely taken me a long time to process through everything that's happened. And we were just actually talking about this before this episode, just about how different our experiences were and, how our processing is going to be very different based on that. Just like how I've kind of gone through a phase where I'm trying to more so accept that yeah, that's always going to be with me no matter what, but I can choose today to kind of recognize that I am hurt, there's a lot of pain there, but I'm going to keep living my life the way I am, and that it will always shape who I am.
Mhm.
Um, and I know Grace is also going through that kind of thing, but you're also uh, just kind of remembering it. And I'm sure even having this as one of our podcast episodes is bringing like some flashbacks to you. So if you, Grace, like, and this is a disclaimer for anyone listening in, if Grace is feeling uncomfortable about a topic, or maybe she starts to share something that we realize maybe isn't the best to include in the episode, we are going to cut it out. So if there are any awkward blank spots or quick changes, that might be why. So please just have some grace and patience for Grace.
For both of us, yeah.
So just on that idea, one of the things that kind of was traumatic and traumatized us, I know for sure, is for years, I know neither of us were really able to touch a Bible or even open one or go to
Yep.
church, for instance. Like every time
Mhm.
I know I would walk into a church building after that, I'm always thinking, okay, what red flags do I see?
Yes.
Which isn't a bad thing, but when you're kind of like overthinking it, it can kind of ruin the experience for you and others as well.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because this week I kind of stumbled across a podcast series that has really helped me make sense of it. And I don't mean to be plugging it. But if there's anybody else out there who's
Yeah.
needing to hear these things, I'd like to recommend it. It's um, done by the Allender Center in Seattle, and they are the School of Theology and Psychology, and they have a series on spiritual abuse.
Yeah, Grace had me listen to the first 3 parts of the episode titled Spiritual Abuse, and it just had a lot of stuff that I connected with, like, oh my gosh, that happened, so
Right.
we know that this happens like all over the world to tons of people.
Right. Right. And honestly, one of the reasons why I wanted to mention that too is because you triggered a thought that kind of came from that podcast that really stuck with me. It's because of those experiences, everything we do now feels ruined because
Yes.
we can't trust anybody. You can't even trust yourself. It's hard to open up. You feel like you have just been torn away from a community where you found your identity, and your identity was in the community. And now that you have ripped yourself from it, you don't know who you are anymore. You don't enjoy life the same way that you did. And so it's this really interesting process. And there's a lot of grief in that.
But if someone comes out of an experience like that and doesn't grieve, then I think maybe you should go see a counselor or start thinking through these things, because if you bottle it up and just let all of that darkness and brainwashing and everything sit inside of you from like a spiritual abuse experience, it might come out later in a not so fruitful way. So I'm just gonna kind of set the scene a little. We're gonna talk about something that really shaped Grace's past and also mine as well, but in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it shaped me because my sister, you know, I hear all these stories from her, but also because we had the other end of this experience through someone else. So, do you want to kind of introduce the topic?
Yeah. So at this church that we had started attending,
WTF.
WTF, they also had a lot of programming because they really wanted to develop a lot of really active Christians in the community to go out and go share Christ. And so they had some programs for people who are probably out of college and wanted to develop some other skills like arts. And they also had a private school, which was, K through 12. And then they also had this internship, or you could consider it a year-long kind of Bible school or discipleship program, which was designed for young men and women to basically become these really passionate, zealous followers of Christ. And it was basically a place where you would see kids probably college age participating. So it was a lot. I think the people in my cohort, there were about 13 of us, I think. We were all between the ages of like 18 and 25, 26, I think. I was getting ready to graduate high school when we had started kind of spending time at this church. And I had started making friends with some of the gals my age, and all of them were going to go do this program. And they kept asking me if I would do it too. I should do it too. It's a year long. We were going to do it from the September of that year to the August of the next. And they just were saying how great it was and how all of their older siblings had done it, and just couldn't go on and on about how awesome and amazing it was. And so I really wrestled that feeling, because I didn't want to feel like I was just doing it because everybody else was. And at one point, I felt like I needed to be a part of it towards the beginning of the summer. And so started raising money. It did cost. There was a tuition, which I look back at now and go, why in the world did you make us pay for this?
Yeah. And then you also didn't live at home that whole year.
And that is there are so many strange things that I look back at now and go, why? But we'll get to that for sure. I was really excited. This was a time in my life too where I felt like I was really moldable, because I had just re-encountered God after kind of coming out of a really dark point in my life. And so I was really excited to really commit and feel like I was committing my life to God by giving him a year of my time, and to develop those skills and those languages and acts of what it looked like to really be a good Christian, in a sense. Yeah, there were so many, I don't really know, Becca. I'm like, there were so many things that I believed too that people were telling me. I was convinced that I was going to marry a pastor because so many people had told me that. And mind you, my husband is not a pastor, nor does he want to be. And I am very thankful for that.
On the other end too, just so people know, while Grace was in the program for that year, we had one of her classmates living with us. It was so awkward because Grace literally was living with another family like 5 minutes away, but we weren't allowed to see her. But we also had this girl living with us, and our family was pretty like open, and we just wanted to love her and let her have a safe place to chill out at home. But I realized that not all the families were as open to just letting these students chill out, but they really wanted them to be super involved, like in everything.
My parents and Becca opened up their home to one of my cohort members who was a good friend at the time. And I ended up getting placed with the associate pastor's family. And yeah, they lived relatively close to my actual family. And I think there were some expectations that like I would be really involved. I would go to all the things with them. I would help take care of the house.
I remember you said you cleaned a lot, right?
Well, yeah, they had 5 kids. They had 5 kids, and it was a huge house. And so I think there was an expectation that as being a member of the household, you would carry your weight, which of course I understand that if I lived in my own house, I would probably be doing chores and stuff. But it definitely had a weird feeling being in somebody else's house and playing by their rules too. Whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember hearing stories about that, like the farting thing.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
So you told me, so yeah, when Grace came out of this master's commission thing and came home, she had tons of stories to share, of course, so I heard a lot. But one of the things that really got me is the family she lived with had this thing about farting in public, where like they would get mad if you farted at the dinner table. They would send you to the bathroom. Like you had to go to the bathroom anytime you needed to fart. And if you were super gassy, you're just out of luck.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
See, what's funny is it was bad because I would probably encourage the kids because I would laugh.
Well, it is funny.
But it's because we grew up with the value that it was funny.
It is. Who doesn't laugh at farts?
I couldn't ask. Oh boy.
We had some fun talking about farts and everything, but we need to get to the nitty-gritty here because this is a very serious topic, and I feel like other people will be able to connect with these stories. So let me just kind of start out asking you some questions, get this conversation going.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question is kind of like in your daily life while you were in this program at WTF, what did it look like? Like, what was the day-to-day schedule kind of thing?
Oh my goodness. Well, so I started waking up at 4:45 every morning because we were told that.
What the heck?
We were told that to be a good Christian and in order to experience God's glory and holiness, that we needed to spend time with God every morning. And honestly, the longer, the better. And so I think for me, I felt like I need to get up. Everybody else is getting up at 6. I'm getting up at 4:45. So I would get up, go to the couch, take my Bible and journal, and just turn on a light, and everybody else in the house is asleep, and just do some quiet time. Most of the time I fell asleep on the couch. Other times I would just sit there reading, trying to get through, trying to drink a cup of coffee because I was so tired. But basically from 4:45 to probably 6, I would do that, and then get ready to go, would drive into the church every morning. We would usually do a devotional that was led by one of my peers, and we would do worship, and then usually we would usher into some sort of class time, which usually looked like kind of going over announcements. Somebody would talk about kind of what was going to go on during the week, and then we would go through different like lectures. Most of them were recorded. We did things like John Johnson series. Oh gosh, there are a bunch of different series we did from all these different pastors that were video recorded. And we would take notes and write papers. We did have homework. We did lots of Bible reading and interpreting. We'd have guest speakers come in. We would have Pastor Power Hour every week. Which is where the main pastor would come in for an hour and just come in and answer questions or talk about stuff that we like wanted to talk to him about.
Like he knew all the answers.
Like he had all the answers to everything. And the irony is, you know, as it got later into the year, I recognized he was just talking in circles and never really gave black or white answers.
I mean, what do you do?
You just listen to him, and when students started disagreeing with him, he'd continue the circle again in a spiral, and it was okay.
So fake it till you make it, I guess.
Pretty much. Well, and I think he had power. He knew it. He knew people looked up to him, and little college kids weren't going to scare him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then towards the end of the day, we would usually clean the church, and we all had chores. So we cleaned the bathrooms and stuff at the end of the day.
Did you guys have the top floor of the church that you had to clean? Because the church had 3 floors.
Yes, but sometimes we did all 3.
No way, because that's weird. Because I was part of that school attached to the church for a couple years. They assigned all of us chores to do after school every day too. So why in the world? Is it just training? Like, are they like, clean, you degenerate fools?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was stupid. It was slave labor.
Well, yeah, we all know that. But
yeah, so once we cleaned, then we would all go home at the end of the day. So
right, unless you had club, right?
Unless you had club, which was basically detention. You would only get it if you had like not finished a homework assignment or did something wrong on your homework, which for me, I think there was a homework assignment where they didn't agree, or like I didn't check something off right, and so they gave me club. And then the other time had to do with interpersonal relationship issues. I was having a hard time with the gal that they paired me with to be my mentor because she was a little younger than me. And I was like, I don't understand why you paired us together. We don't have a good relationship. And they were forcing us to spend all this time together. It's like, what is going on? And so they gave me club because I didn't meet that criteria of like, we didn't meet every week.
That's the weird thing I find sometimes about, that kind of culty Christianity experience there is, if they find out you don't like someone, they'll think it's like God pushing you to love them.
Yes, like it's just if you pray for them, then you'll love them more.
It's like, they hate each other. That just means we need to try harder because that means they'll have an even better bond.
Yeah, no, that's not true. To clarify, club was basically doing yard work for the church. So it was a lot of raking. There were times where they would give us toothbrushes and do like the panels in the foyer of the church that are like between the floor and the walls. Oh man, it was work. Some people had more hours than others, but
what was the average amount of hours people were given?
I think usually you'd have maybe 2 to 3 hours.
What the heck?
But some people got 6 or 7, and
why?
Because they didn't do well with academics, and there was homework, and so I were a few members in the program that didn't do well with school related stuff.
I mean, just right now, like, I just want to say I like, not sorry in like, wow, I'm so sorry for you, but like, I empathize. And you should not have had to go through that. Like, anyone should not have to go through 7 hours of cleaning with a toothbrush or anything like that. That's honestly, like, I mean, that's abusive.
Because of homework issue.
That's so awful. I hate those people more now.
It doesn't make any sense. And not to, like, on top of that, so, hearing me get up super early and making us do all this cleaning, we were physically exhausted. We were physically used day to night, through the night. We would go to 10-day conferences where we were working full time, over full time. And then we would come right back. We'd fly right back from the conference and be expected to clean up and set up the church within hours of coming back from the airport at like 2:00 in the morning.
This sounds more like obedience training for a dog than actual Bible school.
It was ridiculous. And then we would go home and then they'd expect us to wake up early to go to church early. And there were lots of days of putting on events, working, and really just beating us until we were exhausted. I got sick so much.
I remember.
As I was reading back through my journal, I kept finding journal entries where I was like, darn, I'm sick again.
I just know that, like, for some reason, you weren't allowed to, like, talk to us unless you were given permission to, like, call us or something. But I remember that, like, you weren't allowed to tell us you were sick.
Yeah, I don't remember that part, which is interesting, but like, yeah, they tried to have a lot of control over kind of what was going on.
Yeah, I just remember you got like super sick on a missions trip. Like you got a fever, you were pooping it out. It was like all the bad stuff, and it was really awful. And they would not allow you to tell us. They wouldn't allow anyone to tell your family that you were sick.
Well, and it wasn't just me. A lot of people got sick on our. So we went to Costa Rica for like 2 weeks, and most everybody got some sort of bug.
Yeah, and the only way we found out was when the person living with us came back and told us that everyone got
all been sick.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really bad.
I was like, why would you keep families from knowing the well-being of their own like kids or siblings?
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and it's funny too, because I remembered I got sick. I was really sick while I was working at a conference, and I told my bosses in the room that I was working, I was like, I'm not feeling well. I think it might be best if I'm not working. And they were like, yeah, we'll send you back to your hotel. And when I told the people who led the internship program the next day, they were like, oh my gosh, you should have talked to us first. Like, as in, we should have known so that we could have made the decision for you to go home or not, which probably wouldn't have been go home. It probably would have been continue to work and just suck it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I could have totally seen them being like, oh no, you have to do this for God. Like, you need to keep going so you can spread God's, like,
well, and that's the thing. It's like, it's so funny because my bosses were so gracious to let me go, and I went home to go take a nap, and it just helped a million times.
Yeah, I mean, a nap when you're losing so much sleep can be like getting $1 million at the lottery.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. It's true.
I know one interesting thing, and I'll kind of just throw this in there. Each family that had an MC student living with them had to write a review each week.
Yes. Yeah.
So thankfully, my family, my parents and I, we were so chill. We just gave our MC the best reviews every week, no matter what, because we're like, this doesn't matter. This is stupid that we have to do this. I remember they even let me write one because they're like, oh, we're too busy. Becca, can you just fill that out really fast? And I'll be like, yeah. And our MC student will be sitting like right in front of me, and I'll be like, did they do this? Giving them the best marks, because it's just ridiculous that you even have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you said sometimes you didn't get very good marks because of very silly things, right?
Oh, yeah. I think some of the ones were like about your relationship with your family. Some of them were about like how involved you were.
Yeah, like how much
Were you
time
doing?
did they spend with
Yeah, how
you
much
this
time did you
week?
spend? How much did they clean and help you out around the house?
Like we didn't care. We just had our student, like she just helped us clean like we all did on the weekends, and maybe she'd have dinner with us when we made dinner, but we knew she had a ton to do, so we'd just let her be in her room most of the time. Like I don't get the big deal. I feel like our family was probably the best one to live with though. Honestly.
And I feel like we haven't really spoken to how it became hellacious, but
Yeah, let's talk about hell. Let's
I
go.
I don't even know where to start. I feel like
How about just the culture that MCs brought in, like how it made you feel? I know you had mentioned to me in the past just this whole feeling of shame that you felt whatever you did, whatever you said, you had to be perfect or else.
yeah, there was, and I think this is something that's common in spiritually abusive contexts, is that there is this sense of like, I am obliged to act a certain way. I need to demonstrate my loyalty. I need to demonstrate that I am part of this community by fitting into whatever roles it is that they've had designated, or into whatever behaviors are acceptable. And so for me, that means shoving a lot of who I was down and trying to become who it was that they wanted me to be, basically, instead, and to express that through obedience.
Yeah.
Through humility, which was like just being walked upon.
Yeah.
Being joyful, but a superficial joyful, being out of touch with your true emotions and really only experiencing emotions that we felt like were from God, which some emotions are not allowed. And then connecting with people for certain reasons. Like, you really only want to befriend those that are holy, only those who are whole, only those who demonstrate themselves to be strong Christians. Don't hang around those people who aren't. Apart from them, and once I left, I struggled so much to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
It took a really long time to figure out those things.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I almost interrupted you there, but I wanted to say that I think that's how it is for any cultish experience. Like, because you just lose all of your identity because you're becoming who someone else wants you to be to please them. Because you know bad things will happen, like club, like you'll have to clean for 8 hours, or
you're going to be pulled into somebody's office and reprimanded by the pastors for being a certain way.
Like maybe you have a demonic spirit or something.
Maybe they need to bring it out of you.
Yeah, it's just terrible. It makes me really angry that people think that is okay.
And that is, that's a really normal feeling.
And yeah, sadly, that's pretty normal for a lot of cult experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a lot of anger that I still am learning how to deal with in regards to this situation. And this day, I feel like I want to turn around and vomit when I have to think about interacting with the people associated with this time in my life, and going back to this physical community, even to the like geographical location. Like I'm pretty sure my body would go into fight or flight mode. And it's scary to me.
So I remember during this experience, this just kind of came to my mind. There was this thing called flossing that you talked about when you came back from MCs.
Well, and it was just a joke. It was an inside interpretation of what one of the primary values was was confronting brothers and sisters, which comes from a piece of scripture in the book of Matthew. And honestly, I don't remember.
Oh, is it the one that says like speaking to your brothers and sisters in love or something?
Yes. And like, if they don't listen to you, take it to X, Y, and Z person. And if they still don't listen to you, then you go to whoever.
Authority. Yeah.
Yes. And so confrontation was really, really big in this program because they felt like they were doing people a service by getting them out of their darkness, by taking them out of that place and making them grow. When a lot of time, it turned into things like betrayal and a lot of hurt and a lot of abuse too. But a friend and I think even Bekah came up with the term flossing. I don't know why, but it was our code word for being confronted or confronting somebody. Because I will admit, there were several times where I confronted members in my peer group too. And honestly, it was usually because they had done something to hurt me. And so then I would go talk to them about like, why did you do this? And so we would ask each other, did you floss today?
Did you floss? Did you remember to floss?
Did you floss? Did you remember to floss today? But yeah, I mean, and we experienced a lot of that in the program. I can't speak to what everybody else experienced, but I have all these journal entries of all the times that I ever got pulled aside by the leadership and got reprimanded for stupid things. Things like flirting, things like a guy in the program gave me his jacket because I was cold.
Yes. Grace, I remember you told me that story.
Oh my gosh.
And what happened to me is I was on a field trip for the school part of this church. And they had the same thoughts about that. And I remember you telling me being reprimanded for taking a guy's coat. And it was a cold winter's night. We were walking from like a play. I was wearing like a tank top dress. I didn't realize how cold it was going to be. So one of the guys looked at me. He's like, I'm wearing a long shirt. You can take my coat. And I was like, no, I can't take your coat. Like in all dead seriousness, if I had taken his coat, I was so scared. I was scared that they would reprimand me because they would have if they found out.
Well, and their reprimanding wasn't out of love, although they would have claimed it. It was oftentimes very scary, and they would talk
terrifying.
Talk to you like you did the worst thing in the world, and that you were such a horrible, selfish person.
And there's that thing too in this cult idea, like this cult mindset, is that you are the most disgusting thing on the planet. And so you should be grateful for your salvation and for us to lead you there.
Yes, it's so true. Like you need to remember why you need Jesus. And I think there could be an element of truth to that because I think that Christ plays a part in our lives, but I don't think that we're meant to use that to make other people feel worthless.
Yeah, that's healthy.
No. Yeah, I definitely had that moment as well.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was no good.
I also remember this wasn't just for MCs, but for both of our experiences. The whole church, WTF, had this idea of the secular being evil. So, like, we weren't allowed to watch movies. We weren't allowed to listen to music that wasn't involving Christ or any Christ-like lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. And that's another element of the cult mindset, is that they're trying to control what you take in.
Yes. Yeah.
They also, I was going to say too, they made me feel like my public school experience was like crap.
Yes.
Like it wasn't valued. You can't find God in that. Like, obviously, how can you survive as a Christian in that kind of experience? Learn how to articulate your faith. And I remember being so mad because even though my experience was hard, I had valued it a lot. And I was one of maybe 2 or 3 people who went to public school because everybody else was a graduate of this private school through the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were, just in general, I'm kind of curious. After going through that experience, that terrible experience, what were some of the outcomes? Whether they're good or bad, I just want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think one of the initial outcomes, and this was restored pretty quickly, is that I felt like I turned against my parents when I came home, because I had been basically brainwashed to think and believe that the man had to be the head of the household, which I think is the belief of some people. This was a very strong belief for this group and this community. But I have 2 amazing parents. We have 2 amazing parents, and our mom tends to be more outgoing than my dad, and also a little bit more involved because our dad was always working full time. I mean, even to this day, I mean, we've talked about this with our parents, and they know how how sorry I am and how much I love them. But I basically accused my mother of being too controlling and domineering because she didn't let my dad take on his role as man of the house. I think a lot of the trauma, which I didn't want to dive into too much here today, a lot of the trauma for me came from several meetings with leadership that were surprise meetings where they would pull me into their office, and I was accused of not being real, not being vulnerable, being a liar, and essentially just being unworthy or untrustworthy. And these things were really the antithesis of who I was being taught that I was as a daughter of Christ. And yet I listened to it. And even to this day, those words swirl around in my head. And when I hear them from other people, or when I've been accused of other things, I still hear those words echo, and those lies echo in my head of, you are not who you say you are. And I just say to hell with that.
Yeah. Yeah, girl.
Because that's just total bull.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify too, Grace is one of the most wonderful people ever. Like, she's totally trustworthy and honest. Like, I've known her the longest out of everybody. Well, besides my parents. And I know who she is. And yeah, they're the liars. Like, they're the evil doers here, you know.
I think one of the other things too about being in this kind of experience that it made me feel really insecure about who I was is that I didn't feel like my personal story wasn't good enough. People didn't want to hear about me. I was never asked in this program where we did tours across the country and across the internationally to ever share my testimony, and everybody got to go at least once, if not twice. And
wait, so you didn't go at all?
I was never asked to go at all. And
maybe that's a good thing.
I guess so. And the people who did get to go more than once were the people that I see in my mind as those who were favored or preyed upon, in a sense, because they were seen as so broken, that they had this great testimony of sex, drugs, rock and roll, like really showy, lots of hurt.
Maybe throw some glitter at the crowd.
Yeah. And then you see all this redemption in the end, which is wonderful. And I do not discount those stories, but you should not also discount the stories in anybody else.
Yeah, like you could have had a testimony of like, yeah, I ate a pretzel one day and I just realized, you know what? I want to change my life. Like, don't discount those stories.
I love that. And then I want gluten-free forever. My life has changed.
My life has changed.
It's kind of true though. So it was weird.
I feel like, too, that you almost kind of had this feeling that something was wrong the whole time, but you can't quite place it.
That's true.
And you've changed, too. Like, you know that all that stuff was bad now, but I know that there are probably other classmates you had today that still walk by what they were taught there, and that kind of scares me in a way, because I'm like, how can you live by all those high standards they set for you, those impossibly high standards,
Mm-hmm.
and feel guilty and shame every day that you're alive?
Yeah, I feel guilty and shameful that you didn't wake up to have time with Jesus that morning, or that you didn't
Yeah.
follow that nudge to go speak to that one person, or that you didn't give all of your money to that homeless man on the street. There's so many things that you could have shame about, and I just feel like those shouldn't be those things.
Yeah.
But there's just so many things that, sometimes it's really hard to just articulate what happened, how it felt,
Yeah.
and the way that it looks in life now.
Yep.
And I feel like sometimes there's not enough words to actually be able to accurately capture what it was. But I do know that out of this time, there has come some healing and some opportunities to have conversations about it. Like Becca's had that chance to work on her documentary, or her little mini doc that she made. And I've had chances to work through questions and doubts. At times, people probably thought I looked like I was crazy asking certain questions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I know that we are finding safe people and safe communities now, where we are able to share these stories and experiences and work through them together.
Yeah. I mean, it takes time, and it also takes time to find people you trust.
Right, especially when you feel like you can't trust anymore. It's a hard thing to reestablish.
Yeah, I agree. These things can kind of crumble you into tiny crumbs of pretzel, and you can't put it back together. But sometimes you find just the right person that can sweep up those crumbs into a dustpan
Mm-hmm.
and make something new from it. Make a new relationship. Maybe you'll make another pretzel, but it'll be a better pretzel.
Oh, yep.
I'm just thinking about pretzels a lot.
I was gonna say, you seem like you're in a pretzel kick, so
Yeah, pretzels.
I don't know. I guess to end this, I'd like to end it on an encouraging note too. That if you've ever been someone to experience this kind of stuff, or if any of this resonates with you, just know that there are other people out there who go through these things. It may not be to the same degree. It may
Yeah.
not even happen the exact same way, but you're not alone. And it's okay that it's going to take a while to feel like you can get back to who you are, and getting back to a normal, when stepping away from a community that was really significant to you, but actually also significantly hurt you.
Mm-hmm. And I know I feel awkward plugging this in as well, but if anyone does want to kind of explore what spiritual abuse is, or even wants to kind of know like about the project I was working on, the film I made is posted on YouTube, and all you have to do is type in "Walking Through Fire Defining Spiritual Abuse," and you should see it. I did turn off comments, and that's only because I don't want anyone posting hurtful things about experiences people have gone through. I wanted it to be a safe place for people to just watch it. Feel free to watch and share it. That would probably just be really cool to be able to share my project with others. So
yeah, and share a piece of your heart, because I think this is a topic you care about a lot too.
Yeah, it's like a piece of us, though, because I know you helped me a ton with that project, too.
It was a lot of fun. And I was really proud. I am really proud of you. And I'm proud of the things that you've gone through, the things that you've endured, and the person that you've become as well, because you're really resilient, and then you express it through such creativity that it's really inspiring.
Wow, thanks. That's really nice of you. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
Oh, stop. I'm sure not ever. But...
No, but thank you. But anyways, thank you guys for listening in this week. We hope that you'll keep coming back and hearing more about our crazy stories with churches and life and anything else, like pretzels, of course. So
yes.
Stick around. Bye.